We have a lot to talk about here, including an extensive history of Paul George. So before we get to the content, I just want to let you know, I was able to secure a PlayStation 5 off of StockX. It's very overpriced. If you want a chance to win it, all you have to do is subscribe, turn on my notifications, and that's about it. Whether you're an old subscriber or a new subscriber to this channel, just subscribe, turn on my notifications, comment that you did it, and I got you. If you want an additional opportunity to win this PlayStation 5, additional entries will be given to anyone that subscribe and turn on my notifications for my gaming channel, TheFlightMike TV. Now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro.
Are you staying in Indiana?
I would like to. I think the biggest thing is wanting to win a championship and be the first to win a championship and bring that to Indiana. They have some of the greatest fans, and we have one of the best fan bases. Just their love of basketball is so different in any other state that I want to give them that.
But your name is right there with all the trade rumors right now. We're 6 days away from the trading deadline. What are you hearing from your agent? Like, what's your gut about this? Because it is a business at the end of the day.
Man, I'm not sure. As far as I know, I'm committed. I tell my agent, until it happens, let it happen. But leave me out of it.
Yeah,
I'm focused on. I got a focus of trying to get this team back on board, and all that other stuff. Leave me out of it.
You'll find out if there's something to be told about.
Yeah.
If y'all didn't quite get it, let me say it again. I'm here to stay. I'm here to stay.
Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Guys, if you remember, about a week ago, Paul George came out and said that he wants to retire as a member of the Los Angeles Clippers. And I must admit the timing of all this was fairly interesting. After a very tumultuous offseason that saw one of his own teammates leave and defect to the rival Los Angeles team in Montrezl Harrell, in addition to his head coach getting fired and, of course, them taking some jabs at each other, all content that we covered on this channel extensively, Paul George said he wants to retire a member of the Los Angeles Clippers. And with all due respect, as talented as Paul George is, that's pretty much the equivalent of like your toxic girlfriend coming in here, alienating all of your friends and family away from you, and then telling you that she wants to marry you. Like, it's the wrong time for that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, context aside, I have to tip my hat off to the Los Angeles Clippers because I believe they made one of the most brilliant business decisions that they possibly could make. You see, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, all-star forward Paul George has signed a maximum contract extension with the Los Angeles Clippers that'll guarantee him as much as $226 million over the next 5 years. This is according to his agent Aaron Mintz of CAA Basketball. Woj continues on to say that the Clippers are extending George's contract for an additional 4 years, which is $190 million on top of the $35.4 million guaranteed to him in the 2020 to 2021 season. George will have a new player option before the 2024 to 2025 NBA season, Mintz has said. Now, I asked you guys on a Twitter poll what you thought about the Los Angeles Clippers extending Paul George, and this is what you guys had to say for the most part. But for those of you guys that can't do the advanced calculus, this will take Paul George to about $45 million or $47.5 million per year until his age 35 season. Now look, there's two ways you could look at this. If you want, you could look at it as, hey, Paul George didn't really perform super well in the playoffs. why on earth would the Clippers pay him, and why would they extend him for this long? There's two ways you could look at this. The first way you could look at this is, I think it's a little bit too premature to pay Paul George. He hasn't really performed super well. He was really injured in his first season, and as a result of him being injured in his first season, he should really earn his contract. He didn't perform in the playoffs either, and it's not like the Los Angeles Clippers have a shortage of suitors. They're a large market team. On top of that, this kind of makes Paul George's contract essentially become the new Chris Paul or the new Russell Westbrook towards the latter part of his career. If he continues to underperform, well, then you're stuck paying a player $47 million a year until he turns 35 over the next 4 years, and it may be very difficult to offload that contract if his value continues to plummet. And you have to understand where the Los Angeles Clippers are coming from, and this is with all due respect to the Clippers. The Clippers have historically been known as the lesser Los Angeles team, and I don't mean this as a dig at the Los Angeles Clippers, but with all due respect, you guys haven't won a championship. Whenever people think of Los Angeles basketball, typically they think of the Lakers. As a result, cultivate their own stars or lure many stars over, because typically players would want to go to the Lakers over them. Now you have this opportunity where Kawhi Leonard, who is, in my opinion, a unicorn and a remarkable human being for doing this, decided to join the Clippers over the Lakers last year, and he decided to bring Paul George alongside with them. This pretty much made the Clippers the most competitive they have ever been in their entire history, even over the Chris Paul and Blake Griffin era. So, yeah, it does suck that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard had an unfortunate showing and blew a 3-1 series lead against the Denver Nuggets last playoffs. But if you still compare that to the year before, which is when the Clippers were still an up-and-coming team, that is still probably one of the better results that they've ever had to endure over the past 3 to 4 years, and definitely a top 5 result that they'd endure over the past, history of their entire franchise. So the fact that they were even in such a position, the fact that fans are talking about them, and the fact that they're even in a position that they could potentially make it out of the Western Conference and win an NBA championship. And I understand that we make memes about these people. I understand we joke about Paul George consistently. The fact that all of that is on the table definitely makes this a worthwhile investment, especially when everyone's bagging on Paul George currently, saying that he's fallen off as a star because of his poor playoff showing. This is a perfect opportunity for the Los Angeles Clippers to reiterate their commitment and their desire to Paul George and keep him around for the long term. Then you have to ask the question, what is the cost of them doing this? By doing this, they essentially take themselves out as contenders for the 2021 NBA free agency class. This is playing it safe. This is pretty much saying, hey, we like what we have with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. We're going to run it back this year. And if it doesn't work out, then the Clippers are officially screwed. Pretty much putting all of their eggs in the Paul George basket. Rather, if they decided to let Paul George play out his contract, there would have been potential for Paul George to leave at the end of the season, which, if you ask me, I don't think there was a great chance of happening because he's from Los Angeles. He's always wanted to play in Los Angeles. And now, no matter what, you're stuck with Paul George, even if it doesn't work out with him. Whereas if you just let him play out the remainder of his contract, then if it didn't work out with him, you could have I don't think you could sign him for less no matter what. A star player is a star player. Paul George will get the max no matter where he goes. But if you did let him play out the remainder of his contract and it didn't work out, yes, maybe theoretically you could go after Giannis in the offseason or one of the other many stars in the deep 2021 free agency class. Now, on top of that, bear in mind, Kawhi Leonard still can opt out of his deal next year if things don't work out with Paul George. So at the very worst case scenario, you're probably going to be stuck with Paul George as a member of the Los Angeles Clippers for the next 4 years, which isn't necessarily the worst, but there's two sides to every coin. So let me know in the comment section down below. Did the Los Angeles Clippers make the right move here? Aside from that, I'm your boy, TheFlightMike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.